So the title of my talk is Unsatisfactoriness as a Gateway to Creativity and my experience with Extinction Rebellion. And I don't often give talks. I agreed to give this talk because it was 20 minutes, not the usual 40 minutes or an hour. Because actually I believe that more change happens through asking good questions and engaging together in things rather than one person kind of giving a lot of information from the front of the room. So it's kind of unusual for me to do this. So I will, because I just love questions. I think questions are the most changeful thing that you could sit with. And the question I want to start with is, what is your deepest heart's wish? What is your deepest heart's wish? Deepest heart's longing? What is yours? And I've been sort of just noticing how happy my involvement with Extinction Rebellion has been making me. Kind of being a bit puzzled about it, just like, why is it evoking such waves of happiness in me? And I'm the same, I've got 148 on my WhatsApp, but I've got to go through it. It's like, what's happening now? These kind of waves of happiness. And I think it's because I've realized that actually my deepest heart's longing is to play my part in creating the conditions for a Buddhafield to arise. And that there's something about the qualities of my practice and the qualities of what's important to me that have found a resonance in the non-violence, in the clarity, and in the actions, the beautiful actions that have been unfolding within that movement. So, how do we create the conditions for the Buddhafield, a field in which we can know ourselves as something other than our default inherited condition? So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I want to live my life for more and more fully all the time. How can I help to create the conditions for this field, this energetic field in which we can let go and recognize the truth of who we are. And we can allow that inherited, sometimes I call it it's a computer term, the operating system. Yeah. It's like there's this inherited operating system that the Buddha pointed out. It's the operating system of greed, hatred, and ignorance. So that is what is the default automatic, that's what's happening. And yet we've also got this capacity to create a field in which living beings can see themselves as something more than that and recognize who they really are. So my initial response to the unsatisfactoriness of the human condition, human suffering, was to be political. And I blamed patriarchy, I blamed capitalism, I blamed imperialism for suffering. But I noticed that this narrative, I noticed it by participating in it over many, many years. I noticed that this narrative, for me, eventually didn't sit well with my small, persistent voice that said, nobody ever learnt much, nobody ever grew much from being hated. This was this small, little, persistent voice. And I witnessed the divisions and the pain and the separation. You know, if you separate out those oppressors, and then you separate out those oppressors, and then you separate out those oppressors, and then you separate... Oh my God, there's no one left. Yeah. Eventually, that narrative didn't lead me to want to engage, didn't lead me to want to connect, didn't lead me to want to express what was in my heart, which actually was love. Love for who knows? That for something, I don't know. So at that point, I jumped ship. I jumped ship to Buddhism. And I had transformation of consciousness at the heart of my, as the kind of central aspect of my being. And that lasted for about 20 years. And what's interesting is throughout that time, my husband, it was always, his real thing is the environment. So, you know, he has not flown for years. You know, we do lots of things. You know, partly, you know, I support it, but I never really felt what he felt. Like there was something that he felt about the trees and what was happening and what we needed, how we needed to be about it. That even though it was right there in front of me, it never made me want to really act on behalf of it, even though it was right there. It was quite interesting. But then a friend of mine from Stroud, who's involved in Extinction Rebellion, said, I really want to have a talk with you. I really want to go. And she took me for this long walk in the forest for about 2 hours. And during that 2 hours, basically, what I say is she harpooned me. It was like, and even though I'd been living alongside someone who held a lot of these values for years, that was the first time that I really felt, and probably it was because I'm a very pragmatic person. I like to be able to be helpful. I like to be able to do something I think will really matter. And what she did is she laid out for me, she said, we need about 500 people to get arrested. Would you be one of them? And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I need a clean DBS check for my work, you know. But you know, she just laid out a very clear thing. This is what we need. Are you up for it? As well as just kind of talking to me in a very passionate way about all the science and everything else to do with the environmental emergency. And what was interesting was that after that harpoonedness that I had, I went into about 3 months of being in a real daze. And it was as if someone had given me a terminal diagnosis. As if someone had said to me, you know, you are going to die and not, you know, just going to die shortly. You know, and I was just it was almost like my brain went into this fog and I couldn't quite work out, like, what do I do? And then I was like, mate, you've been talking about impermanence for so long, you know, and now all of a sudden you're relating to it in this very different way, you know. It's like, where have you been all your Buddhist years, you know? What have you been doing? But it really felt like it took about 3 months of this feeling of being kind of thumped, harpooned, kind of confusion about, well, what should I do then? You know, what's important, what's not, what do you do? You know, how do I, you know, what? It was very confusing and painful and, you know, just not really knowing how to be with it. So it was sitting with a lot of unknown and sitting with a lot of fear. And the image that arose for me was the image of the cremation ground. So in Buddhism, there's this image of the cremation ground, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism. It's a place where people go to burn people on a funeral pyre, and sometimes they might not even be able to afford proper pyre, so corpses get brought to that place and they basically decompose. So it's a place of smells and rats and bits of smoke and bits of charred bone, and it's a cremation ground, quite scary, uncomfortable place to go to. But actually, practitioners have set themselves these goals, but set themselves this, a known thing that if you go to the cremation ground to practice, that's where you go to overcome your basic fear. Somewhere you go on your own and you have to face death. You have to face death is all around. You can smell it, you can see it, you can probably taste it. And in that place, you come face to face with what we usually spend most of our life just trying to avoid. Something comes at us and we think about it for a while and we're like, yeah. Oh, but no, I prefer to go and distract myself with this. Yep. No, in that place, in a cremation ground, you just can't distract yourself. And that's where you experience the unsatisfactoriness, the pain, the fear that's at the heart of our sense of this sense of ourselves as separate, as not connected with life, not part of life, and therefore having to push things away and grab things onto us in order to feel better about our life and ourselves. What if we could let go of that and just face our existential fragility, our existential just awkwardness, just that sense of, what are we doing here really? If we create some space to face into that and feel into that and think, what is it that I'm really here for? So the message that came to me from sitting in the existential climate version of the cremation ground was, be brave. What am I here for? In the face of all of that, can I be brave? Yeah. Can I, and what I mean by being brave is not having fear, but, the classic, feel the fear and do it anyway, but having the fear, not pushing the fear away, being in the fear, and still doing the things that need to be done. So finding small ways, and that can be as brave as telling your kids, no, we can't have that because we're not going to use single-use plastics. That's quite brave, because there's a part of me that really just wants my kids to think I'm just lovely and the best mum and provider of all wonderful things, but no. And we're not going to go on holiday there. And we're not going to do that. Being brave enough to face some of those habits and patterns of consumption. So that was the first image, the creation ground and the message, be brave. And then the second image that I had while I was thinking about this was the Buddha's one bowl and two robes. I don't know why I see it like that. I just see it, thank you, as like just a bowl here and then two robes, robe here and a robe there. And the climate emergency and all that means, and so beautifully articulated by the other two speakers, is going to mean some really fundamental changes in how we live. And I think that's what partly my excitement is about, because as Buddhists, I think we have a very beautiful message. The role model of the Buddha saying, I can live an exquisitely fulfilled and contented life with one bowl and two robes. That human existence isn't about skyscrapers and all the stuff that we have. That human existence can reach its, I don't know if this is the right word, apotheosis, is that the right word? don't know, yeah, can reach its height and most fulfilling just with one bowl and two robes. And what would it be like? I was thinking to myself, what would it be like to kind of live life so that more and more is let go of until I can, what would be my equivalent of one bowl and two robes? What would that be for me? And in doing that and in bringing this Buddhist principle of contentment into being, showing that something other than the neoliberal con that we've been living in can begin to be dismantled. So for me, the image of the Buddha with one bowl and two robes, the message there is be bold. Be bold in what we can do. Be bold. And the third is not really an image, but it's a real kind of a real belief, a real sense that I have about who we are. Is that, and there was a poem that was in the ceremony, the initial ceremony that we had, the opening ceremony, and in the end it said, the broken world, something like the broken world needs our light. And I don't actually like the narrative of that our world is broken. I think our world is fine. It's the humans, it's us, and it's our consciousness that needs attention. And that even if everything does get destroyed, within a few million years, life will start to create and produce something else. Life will go on. Whatever happens, life will go on. But in the meantime, we've got this massive human creativity and human brilliance. And we can begin to use it in the face of the cremation ground and the need to be brave, in the face of the need to be bold about what we need to do about the climate emergency. We can also challenge ourselves to be brilliant, because we are brilliant. And for all of us to really hone in on what is our particular gift. What is it that we have to contribute to each other and to this time? And I feel really, really blessed to be part of this particular Buddhist movement, because I feel that a lot of the things that we are encouraging, like the importance of friendship, our meditation practices, a lot of things that we've been creating are the brilliance that we need to see in order to make sense of and live well with whatever is coming towards us. So a lot of people that I hang out with these days think it's already all too late. Actually, it's just a question of how can we do this well? And in our conversations, in our being brave, in our being bold, in our being brilliant, we can, when times get tough, people either can form communities that are divisive and harsh, or we can form communities that are inclusive and kind. So for me, that is my heart's longing, is that in creating a Buddhafield, we not only create the opportunity for people's brilliance to grow and blossom, whatever the conditions, but we also allow ourselves to become who we really are.